All right, everyone, here we are ready for our version 8 physical inventory. Again, raise your hand, right? If you are, if you need to ask a question, I'll try to go slow. We will have time for questions. Without further ado, we're going to cover the steps to take a physical inventory in version 8. All right, this is our agenda, right? So to start, right, for version 8, what I have here is a outline, right? If you do not have one of these when you take a physical inventory, please let us know. We have these manuals that go through these same steps, and this particular one is oriented towards using the rental scanners, a specific kind of rental scanner that we have. So if you have these devices, right, this is the version that you want. We have a version for just taking a manual inventory. We have a version for using the old PT scanners, where the ones with the curly cord scanner attached to them. And we also have some instructions on using the newer type of scanner. If you're using a Foundry Logic application on an iPod, right, or you know, on some kind of Apple device, then we do have instructions for that. So the basic steps are the same, except for how you actually get your counts into RPro. So you know, I'm using this one as an example, even though the Palm and Jana may not be what you're actually using. The most important thing about doing a physical is prepping everything right. So if you are MultiStore, you want to make sure that you have cut off transfers, and that and even if you're not a MultiStore, you have to cut off your vouchering in, because when we're counting, we want to make sure that we have everything in RPro that we're physically going to count, right? So if you get a box of merchandise in the day of the physical and you don't have time to voucher it in, then put that aside, don't count it, right? So organizing what we call your cutoff dates. If you're MultiStore, okay, there's a note down here on this, initializing your inventory to your remote about 2 or 3 days prior to the physical, right? And so if you're not familiar with what initialized inventory means, that's a polling step, right? And if you need help with that, please make sure you're talking to one of our techs to make sure you get it done correctly. Because if this step is not done and you're actually loading your counts at the remote store, you could get inconsistent results, which would be wasting your time. All right, so if you're a single store, right, then this step is not necessary, okay, but you still want to make sure that you vouchered everything in. You want to make sure that you know, go through your inventory, make sure everything's got a tag on it, make sure it's all organized, right? So the more work you can do ahead of time, the faster and more accurate this step is going to be when you're taking a physical, right? So that's why we recommend, right, this this mapping process, right? So you've got a rough map geographically of the store and any stock rooms, and assign what we call a zone to them, right? This is best practice. There are some people out there who count without zones. They do what we call a simple physical. We're going to cover the zone type of physical here because it's, you know, where most of our people end up doing their physicals. All right, so keep your zone small, right? You don't want to spend an hour and a half scanning a zone, right, for 2 reasons. First reason, right, is if you have a problem getting that the scanned items off the scanner, right, and you lose that scan, you lost an hour and a half's worth of work. Okay, if your scans, you know, if your zones are small, 100 to 200 items, it takes you maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes to scan a zone, and you lose that one, not so bad. You go back and you recount it. The second reason to keep your zone small is if there is an error, something is scanned that's not in Retail Pro, and you know what zone it's in. If the zone is small, it takes less time to find that item when you go back. All right, so 2 reasons to keep your zone small, plus there's the fatigue factor, right? So you scan a zone, right, and with some scanners, you have to go dump that zone into Retail Pro right away, right? So you're changing your focus, changing scenery, you know, getting a little exercise, so it cuts the fatigue factor down if the zones are small, so you're not scanning for like an hour at a time and then kind of getting zoned out, get it zoned out. All right, so prep, right, very important. Go back to this, right? Some people, right, will do an on-hand report before the fact, right, and they will do one after the fact. And they do that because they might be required by their accounting people. This is not necessarily a required step, but if you do an on-hand report before, right, you do an on-hand report after, and you know, and hold on to them. Then, if anybody asks, you've got the information. The on-hand report can be whatever level of detail that you use normally, right? It could be at the item level, could be at the DCS level, could just be, you know, the summary for the whole store. That's up to you. Okay, backing up, right? Really important. So if you don't know whether your system is backing up, then this is a good opportunity to find out, right? If the system's being automatically backed up, is the backup current when I go to take a physical? If it's not current, then, you know, if some disaster strikes, then we can't go back to the way it was right before you did the physical. All right, testing a download. Also, you know, if you're using the scanners, right, you don't want to be standing around on the day of the physical with your teams ready to go and being, you know, tinkering with the scanners and trying to get them to work. If you rent scanners from us, we always send them at least a day or 2 ahead of time, set up a tech appointment to make sure they're connected and functional at least a day before the actual count is scheduled to take place. So if you own your own scanners, make sure you dig them out, make sure they're charged up, make sure they're talking to Retail Pro, right? And you know, do that at least a couple days ahead of time. So if you have a problem, you can get with tech and resolve whatever problem it is, so that you can whiz through your physical when the day comes. All right, we've already talked about the zone map. Okay, so that is something that is highly recommended. It's not actually, you know, required, but it just helps you keep track of what you've counted, right, and what you haven't, right? So it's a pretty important, you know, step in this process. All right, so the day comes, right, when it's time to count, right? So this information here is all preliminary in setup. So if you have tested scanners, right, you're already past the start. Okay, so I'm going to get past here, and we're talking here about starting the physical. All right, so it's the day of the physical. Okay, where did Retail Pro go? Here we go. Okay, so it's the day of the physical, and best practice is that you shut the store down while you're doing physical. Always, 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 that's the best practice. And so either it's end of day, right, and you process the last customer out the store, you close the store, and then you're going to count. If you're multi-store, right, before you start the physical, then you need to poll, quick poll with the main, okay? And that is, you know, a step that makes sure that the sales information goes up to the main, right, and then it processes in, right, and then if you quick poll again, right, then you have the updated inventory in your remote. right? If you're a single store, all you need to do is just make sure you run whatever sales for the day, right? And then you lock the door. If you're coming in the morning to do physical, and you just want to make sure, and if you're a single store, no big deal. If you're multi-store, you do want to make sure that you polled your last night's sales. So again, a lot of people will quick poll, and they'll do it twice. And just in case you, let me just see. I'm not sure if this data shows a quick poll. Yeah, so there's a quick poll icon. It doesn't have to be set up here, but that's where it is on your polling module, just in case you need it. Okay, so quick poll, and you do it twice, once to get the stuff down to your main, right, and another to make sure that whatever went to the main comes back to your system. All right, so it's the morning of or whatever. We've tested our scanners, we've got our zones, we've checked, we've made sure we've vouchered everything in, right? We've made sure we've accepted any transfers if you're multi-store. We're ready to go. All right, so to freeze or take a snapshot of the inventory, you go here from the main Retail Pro menu to More, RPro PI, and OK. All right, so that pops up this module, okay? And in this module, all right, you're going to go to the Physical tab, okay? Stores. Oops, and I got one sitting here, so let me get rid of that. I'm kicking the tires a little earlier. All right, so you're going to go to Physical, Stores, okay? And then this should be blank. Right, because you haven't started the physical yet. Right? So in order to start the physical or take the snapshot or freeze the inventory, you click on the new up here in the upper left-hand corner. Okay, it knows who's logged in. Right, you can make notes if you want. You pick your store from this list. Okay? If you see more than one, you only want to pick yours. You're only dealing with your inventory. Okay, and what that does is make a snapshot. So that it's going to make a list of every inventory item, right, and how much you have in your store. Okay, and that's what we're going to compare our counts to. So once we've done the start physical here, okay, we're going to go back to the main PI menu, and we're going to go into zones. So we're not going to go back to the stores menu until we're done. Okay, so this is the list of your zones. Okay, and so at this point, right, you're out at the store, or out on the floor, and you're capturing counts. Okay, so if you're using the rental scanners, either the PTs or the Janims or whatever, you go scan a zone, right, and then you bring that scanner back to Retail Pro, and you dump the contents of that scanner into Retail Pro. All right, so that process, right, starts here in the physical zones. You go to New Zone. Okay, it's going to ask you what store. So you're going to pull this down. Okay, and you're going to tell me what the zone name is. Now the zone name, I believe you want to keep under 5 characters here. So people do backroom 1 or whatever, right? So these should be on your zone map, okay, labeled so that when your employee brings you the scanner, they say, okay, so I'm done with BR1, right? And you verify BR1. Okay, is right. Let's hang on. BR1, let's say, is this yellow section right here, right? So you have that labeled, or we'll just call it flies. Let's call it flies. This is a fishing store, right? So those are fishing flies. All right. So we go back to here, right? So let's just call it flies, just for consistency. So name the zone, put any notes in here if you wish, right? You can put in, who counted it, when they got done, et cetera, et cetera. Optional, but sometimes it can help troubleshoot. Okay. So if I click OK here, this creates the zone. Okay, and then it wants to know, how am I filling in counts in this zone, right? So if you're using a scanner, okay, of any kind, that's portable terminal. Okay, and this computer happens to be configured for the PT type scanner, right? So it's going to be a little confused here because I don't have one actually connected. Okay, but if I had one actually connected, you would start this, you would click the button, right, on the scanner that sends the counts up, right? If you're using the PT scanners, it's F2, F1 to start send. If you're using the Janums, there's a process called hot sync, right? And you press either a button on the cradle or a button on the little desktop of the scanner, right, to send your counts, right? And then you'll see the counts flow into here, right? And then when it's done, it'll tell you it's done, or it'll tell you if it found any errors, right? Since I don't actually have a scanner, I'm going to have to try to get out of this, right? So I just clicked over here on the manual entry, right, instead of the portable terminal. Okay. And so while I'm in here, I'm going to explain what the other two options are, okay, just because you might be taking your counts in this way as well, right? So import file has the ability to import a text file or a CSV file, comma separated value file, that either you can create, right? In Excel, we have some people who will take a laptop and a USB scanner, open up an Excel spreadsheet, and then just scan, right, a list of their items into the Excel spreadsheet. And then they save the Excel spreadsheet as a CSV, and then they import that. Okay, so there are varying ways of using import file. You also can use import file if you have an inventory service like Washington or Regis count your info, right? And if they count your info, then they give us back a file, right? And we make a map for it so we know how to read the contents of the file. And we usually would help you do this the first time. If you've done counts before in version 8 with Washington or Regis, you should already have a map. But generally speaking, we help our clients when they have an inventory service because they only do it once a year or whatever, and they don't remember exactly what to do. So if that's what you're doing, then get a little tech help to get that stuff imported. All right. The last way that you can get counts in is good old manual entry. Right. So you can actually type or scan each item number and tell me how many. Okay, so you can do this in version 8, right? So you could, put your merchandise, on a rolling rack, roll it up to a workstation, and then if you're doing it that way, scan-wise, right, where it says quantity for current item, right? So if you're planning on scanning every item on the rolling rack, then you leave that radio button there under next item. So you put the cursor here, right, and then you scan, right? So I'm pretending I'm scanning, right? I'm just typing an item number in, but you can see how I type the item number in, like I was scanning it. It assumes 1, and it puts it down here, right? So 102, 1, 103, 1. So these are all items like I was scanning them off the rolling rack, right? So scan everything, and then click the close button. Right, so whether you're importing or doing portable terminal or whatever, you're going to come back to this screen, okay, and then you click the close button, then you can see, right, I have counts now. Okay, So in my flies zone, right, I have 3 scans. If I want to see what those scans are, that's the scanned button over here. Right, so those are the items that I scanned, right? And then here's the, let's see, counts. Yeah, counts are not on here. Well, that's not right. One sec, please. This is quantity. It's right here. That's not right either. So that must be, that's on hand quantity. Sorry. So that's not quantity. I need scan quantity. Scan. There we go. All right. So most of yours, if you've taken a physical inventory in Retail Pro before, these screens are already going to be the way you need them to be. Break out a fresh copy here for this demo. So some of my screens weren't exactly right. All right. So you're going to create the zones, right, and get your counts in your zones. I'm going to hit the Retail Pro back button to go to my zone list. All right, I'm going to create another new zone. Okay, in store, and I'll call this flies 2. Okay, and so I've created another new zone. Right, I'm either going to download from my scanner, right? I'm going to import another file, right? Or I'm going to manually enter. So another thing about manual entry, if you're using it, if you're entering like a count sheet from stuff in the back, which is the way some people do it, right? They have a physical sheet, right? And the sheet may or may not have the barcoded items on it. Maybe it just has the item number. Okay, but there's like dozens or multiple quantities, right? So instead of scanning or entering it 100 times, change quantity for current item here, right? And then put in the number, right? And so if I do that and I scan or enter an item number, it's going to stop on quantity. Okay. When it stops on quantity here, then I can type how many, right? So I can and press enter, and then it'll go back up to the item code again. So let's see, watch that again, right? So I scan, type in an item, defaults to 1. If that's all we want, I don't have to type 1. I can just press enter, and it goes back up here, right? So enter another item, right? Stops here. I have 2 of those. Change it to 2, and press enter, right? So however you're accomplishing entering your counts, you get everything in the system entered in. Okay, now the next step to this is what we call merging, right? And some people merge as they go, okay, which means that once they get this zone entered, right, they would merge that zone because they knew they're done with it, right? And then it keeps them from making a mistake, right? And accessing that zone again and maybe adding counts to it when they didn't really mean to. All right. So that step, if you're merging as you go, you can highlight the zone and click this merge zone button over here. All right. And then it says checks to see who's logged in, right? Checks to see if you have permission. Now you get that lovely blue dot next to the actual store number. That means that has been merged. Now, if I were to go right into scanned and look at it, right, I can still see the item. but I couldn't edit these, right? So there's this add counts button. I couldn't edit this. Okay. And while we're in here, there's also the ability to print what's been scanned in this zone. So a lot of people will use this. They'll, especially if you have a high dollar area, like a jewelry counter or something like that, where you want to spot check or totally check over what was actually scanned. Once you get it into Retail Pro, right, you can click this in the zone, click this print button, okay, and you may have different icons than this, right? You might have ones that say VHD, zone, or things that were created specifically for you, right? I'm just going to show you like one of these, just kind of for a flavor of what it looks like. Okay, so the idea here is, that's not the pretty one. Hang on a second here. Let me do this one. Good, this one is better. Okay, so the ones that we give to people look more like this, right? So essentially, what we're doing here is showing you what you scanned, okay, how many you scanned in this zone. Okay, and at this point, the difference doesn't mean anything because we haven't done we haven't counted everything. All right, anyway, so a zone report, right, can give you the ability to print something, carry it back to the zone, spot check, right? Did I really have 10 of these, right? Or is that a typo, right? So you can go back to the zone, you can spot check, and if there's anything that needs to be different, right, then you can come back to here, right, and you could actually edit it in the zone. However, okay, this zone we've already merged, right? So I couldn't edit that one. Okay, so I would have to unmerge it, which is possible, right? So I'd have to go to a different list to show you that. But let's look at this one has not been merged, so I can edit that, right? So I click the edit button. Okay, I go to scanned so I can see the items. Okay, now I can edit this scanned quantity. Okay, I can also add counts. All right, so if I'm working on particularly a manual one, and we'll talk about errors in a second, but if you have got a zone, started a zone, and you're adding some things to it, and then you have to go do something else, and you can come back, right? You can add counts this way, and you get this same dialog box here to decide how you're going to add counts to the zone. All right, so import, right? Read it off a portable terminal or manual entry. All right, so. All right, so I said we're going to talk a little bit about errors, right? So I can't, unfortunately, show you what the error looks like, right? But what I can do, right, is show you on here what the screen actually looks like. So let me get down to the error spot. Okay, here we go. Just a little, right, too far. Hang on. Okay, right here. All right, so if you're using a scanner, right, and if you're using the kind of scanner where we can't preload the Retail Pro barcodes into it, right, then you will probably come across at least a few scanning errors. So somebody scans the wrong barcode. They don't scan the Retail Pro barcode, they scan the vendor barcode, and the vendor barcode's not in the system. So, that comes out as an error, right? So first thing, when you're downloading scanners, right, if you get this message, all it's doing is it's warning you, right, that you had some. You're always going to click OK because you need it to, finish putting the good stuff in your list. Okay, so what happens is on your zone list, you're going to see a red dot on that line, and it's going to show you, right, how many items you had that were bad scans, right? So if it says 1, okay, then you've got 1 barcode, right, that it didn't understand. All right, so as long as that red dot's there, you can't finish your inventory. You have to resolve that. Okay, and so on the sidebar of the menu, there's this errors, right? So I'll go back to here, right? So here's my errors tab over here on the side, right? So essentially, right, if I had errors on this file, right, I would highlight it, right, click on the errors button, and it would show me what my errors were, right? And so since I can't show you there, we'll show you here, right? So down here, this section that's down at the bottom of this page, right? The blank line, it's kind of yellowish, but you probably can't see it too well in the in here, right? Yellowish, okay, and the we counted 1 of these, and this import ID, that's the barcode we scanned. So we scanned this barcode. RetailPro didn't know what it was, so there was 1 of them, right? And so it puts it in here, and it's between 2 things, these 2 things, right? So this gives us an indication of where that was in the zone. So that's why it's important to keep your zone small, because if you have a scanning error, okay, then you know you can go back to your zone and look between the bulb setup cube and the base taro, right? And there's something that's got that barcode on it, okay, and you need to know what it is. All right, so the error listing is to give you the opportunity to take and go find that item, okay, and if you can figure out what the RetailPro number for that was, okay, then you can go right into the error listing and put the item number right here, right in that spot. So you can actually edit, right? So if I had errors here, right, I could click on the edit button. I could put the real item number in, right, and everybody would be happy. Okay, so that's way number 1 to deal with that. Okay, if you can go pull the item and figure out what it is. Right, and figure out what it is, then you edit that right in the error listing for RetailPro, right, and then that resolves the error. Okay, so that's A here, right. B, right, is to delete the scanning error. Okay, and I'm talking, I reference here a printout. That's the zone printout, because if you have errors, the zone printout will show the errors at the top, like what you see here, right? So you have a printed piece of paper where you can take it out to the floor, take it out to the zone, and look for this barcode in between base taro and bulb setup cube, right? So it gives you the tools that you need to go locate these things. All right, so as long as you have a printout, you might choose to delete the error. Okay, and so in here, right, if you highlight it and click this red delete, right, that deletes the error. Okay, but you do have to add that item into inventory, right, once you find it, or add it into the PI count, right, because now it's not anywhere, right? If you delete it out of here, right, then it has not been counted, whatever it is. All right, and then some people, right, will print the zone with the errors on it, delete the errors, and then put everything aside, right, so that they handle all the things that they pulled out that weren't found the first time around, and input them all manually, right, into a zone, right? So for that reason, okay, what some people do is create a zone. So I'm creating a new zone called errors. Okay, and then they would when they identify the items, they would manually enter the Retail Pro item code. Okay, and then they know that they've deleted it out of the error file here, gets rid of the red dot. That's very important because you can't merge a zone if it has a red dot. All right, so back to here, all right? Okay, so after you've deleted all the scanning errors, there's no longer a red dot, right? You got to deal with, you either got to delete them, okay? You have to delete them before you can finish your physical, but it is important that you add them back in an error as long as you can identify them, right? Otherwise, they're not in your count and your inventory is incorrect. All right, so I'm going to pop my agenda back up here and see if there's anything. Yeah, talked about that, right? Merging and discrepancies. All right, cool. Okay, so the next thing that happens is we're going to be merging all the zones. Okay, now you saw me merge one zone at a time, okay, which you can do as you go. But the other choice is to do what we call mark what's left. So two choices: you can merge as you go, but if things are coming fast and furious, and you just want to merge everything that's left, as long as you've gotten rid of your red dots for your errors, okay, you can go to mark store over here on the right. Mark store. Okay, that comes up with a checkbox. Every zone that doesn't already have a blue dot, if it's got a red dot, it won't be able to mark it, and it probably will tell you so. So once you've marked them all, okay, you can merge the marked ones, right? You could still merge one at a time, but why? Merge marked. Okay, that puts the blue dots next to each zone. Okay, so once you have counted everything and put everything into the zones and merged them all and fixed the errors, now you can start looking at your discrepancies. Now your discrepancies you don't want to look at by individual zone, because the merging is what takes all your counts, combines them together, and compares them to your snapshot, right? And so until you've got your zones all merged, really doesn't make much sense to look at your discrepancies. But to look at your discrepancies, if you go to the Retail Pro 9 and back out, now it's time to go back to stores, right? So all the work we've been doing up to this point is in zones, okay? But now you go back to stores, all right? And if I go to the discrepancy tab right here, this is only going to show me those items that are different. But since I didn't count everything in the store, this is going to look messy. It's going to have everything in it, pretty much. Okay, so this display is showing you every item, whether your store has it or not. Okay, how many you had. So store start, right, is how many you had when you did the snapshot before you started counting. Okay, the store physical column is the combined total of all of your zone counts. Okay, the difference column is the difference between your store start and your store physical, right? So in this case, right, I started with 0, I counted 1, so the difference is 1. That means that if I don't do anything here, the system is going to automatically create an adjustment. All right, so down here, right, where we didn't count anything, right, I've got on hand of 11, didn't count any. So unless I interfere with that, right, I've got a minus 11, right? So I'm not going to actually, have a real looking physical here, but your discrepancies, right, you can print them, right? So if you need to look at them in an organized way, right, once you're in this discrepancy view, right, you click on print. Okay, this one. right? You may also have some of our BHD designs for this. We have one that's organized by department, one that's organized in item order, which I think this one is, and one that's organized by vendor. So if you don't have any choices for what I just described, please let us know, and we'll give you those doc designs. All right, so here's my items, right? It's showing what I started with, what I counted, and what my differences are. So these reports are only going to show you what's different. Right now it's 77 pages because everything is a discrepancy here. I wasn't careful to actually count items that had on hand, right? So you can print this off, right, and then go, sleep on it or whatever, right? So the one thing about the physical process is if you're able to be closed, then you have you've started the physical, right? That was on hand as of when you started to take the counts. You count everything, right? You feed those counts into Retail Pro so we can compare what you counted with what the system thinks you have. Okay. Once you get everything counted and you get this uploaded in here, okay, you don't need to be in a rush to do the final step, which is update. Okay, because we know what you started with, right? At either at the beginning of the physical, right? And we're comparing the counts to that, not what your current on hand is. So if you are doing this in the morning, right, and you need to open as soon as you get all the counts done, then you can do so. Okay, if you start selling things, we're still going to know what we had as of when we did the counts, right? And if you've counted everything, right, then that relationship between the difference, right, should still be valid, even if you sell or start selling things. Okay, so if you're doing the physical, right, then you do not need to be in a hurry to do the update. You can take your time if you would like to get the discrepancies, to look at them and truly try to figure out. The main thing that we tell people is you want to make sure that your count is right. Like, for instance, I had this example here where I counted 10 of these, right? If that was a mistake, right, then I want to fix the count. Okay, so I want to go back and I want to fix that count so that it says 1, right? If my store start was incorrect, like I double vouchered something or what have you, okay, or if you cross-sell sizes, right, so you sold, there was a barcode missing, and so somebody just grabbed a medium and they're really selling a large, and you cross-sell things like that, those will, wash themselves out, okay, but you need to count what's there and make sure that this count is accurate, because ultimately we're going to adjust, right, to that count, right? So if I took this one, number 203, right, and I needed to fix that count, I'm going to show you how that works. So I need to go back to my merged zone list, right? So see this merged zone list right here? Okay. And now I have an unmerge option. All right, so I think that was in my first one, good scans. No, it was in this one, right? So if I find the zone that it's in, okay, I go to, see, I can't actually go to scan without unmerging it. All right, so let's just unmerge it, okay? And then I can go to zones, right? I can go highlight this, go to scanned, right? And this was the correct one, the one that I wanted to unmerge, right? So now I can edit this, change the count to 1, save it, okay? And then just remerge it, right? So if you need to edit the count because somebody, went scan happy, right, or manually entered the wrong number, right, just unmerge the zone and go fix it, all right? So merge zone again. Okay, so now if I go back to my stores and my discrepancy, okay, now that count has been edited for that item. Okay, so if you look at your discrepancies, if you're going to fix anything, you're fixing the counts, right? You're not going to fix the store start. You're going to fix the counts. You can take your time doing that. If you are, you know, if it takes you a day or two to make sure that you've got everything right, that's fine. When you're ready to do the update, okay, it looks like this. Okay, so you come into the RPro PI, right? You come into physical and stores. Okay, that's our count. You're going to go to update. Okay, it's going to ask you what store. Now, this is really, really, really important, right? So if you're drowsy, pay attention. So this default, right? You need to change this. So update on hand all items. And the reason we change this is that if I have a -1 in my start and I didn't count that, right? I need that that count to go to 0. So if you don't check this, then there's a possibility where you have -1s where you're sold out. It won't fix it. Okay? So this is very, very important. We do have people who forget all the time. If you forget, right, and leave it this way, it's only going to update those things that you counted, so your minuses will still be there. Other things can, you know, can obviously be wrong. Do not despair if that happens to you. Don't try to fix it yourself. Call in and get tech support because there is a possibility, right, as long as you haven't, you know, gone too far or tried to fix it, right, that we could undo or unarchive this and then just re-update it with the proper setting, which would be all items. Okay, so if you forget to change this, just make sure that you raise your hand, call tech support, and because it will save yourself time, energy, and accuracy. Sooner you get tech on the line and help you undo it and redo it properly. All right, so all items, next, right? Usually we tell people you're going to have a reason physical, right? This is going to be the date the adjustment memo is, right? That's defaulting to today, as you can see. So if you wanted to put that, right, in a previous month, you could, right? So just in case nobody you're unfamiliar with the way Retail Pro keeps on hand, it's called perpetual on hand. That means that when you look at on hand in the system, it's as of right now, last transaction or whatever. So there's no snapshot at the end of the month. There's nothing like that, right? So if most people would need to have a physical done by the end of a period, like say 5/31, then they would want to count their inventory a day or two, you know, ahead of 5/31 to make sure that they get their counts, they review their discrepancies, they get it updated, so that at the, you know, end of 5/31, they can run an on-hand report that is reasonably corrected. Okay, but if you want to put your adjustments into the previous month, that's okay. You can do it that way by backdating that. Okay, so yeah, I might not be able to do that because I don't have any history, right? So let me try, let me see if it'll even let me do this. Yeah, okay. So this is not the last thing you see. It looks like the last thing you see, okay? But I need to go click the finish and show you what the last thing you see is, because it's also important here that you check this filter. So when I click finish, you get this filter. You need to make sure this filter is totally clear. Clear all just to make sure, right? Because if there's anything in this filter only going to update, like for instance, if you had a DCS in here, it's only going to update counts for that DCS. If you had a vendor code in here, it's only going to update for that vendor. This is very important when you're doing the complete store. Make sure this is clear. Okay, then click OK. I'm not going to click OK because then it's going to wipe out all my inventory, and I really don't want that. But this is the last step. And in our documentation here that we can provide to you, it goes through all those steps that we just talked about. Okay, here's the update. Okay, and make sure, right, that you change this on hand to all items. Put the reason in. Right, here's the finish that we just said. So after the filter, right, if you click OK, you get this message right here. Okay, now, once the inventory has been updated, some people will run another on-hand report, the same as the version that they ran before they updated anything, right? And if you're one of those people, now's the time before you create any more transactions or change your on-hand anymore. All right, so let's go back to this, right? So that is pretty much, somebody raised their hand. I don't know how long that's been. Hang on one second. Let me see. Let's see if I can unmute you. Can you hear me, Missy?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
And I can wait. I can wait on my question for a few more minutes. It's about something about doing a second physical.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Actually, you know, I was at the point, right? Updating is the last step. Running a report, right? If you're doing it, is, you know, comes right after that. And basically, you know, we're done. Okay. So if you wanted to ask your questions, now's the time.
Okay. We had one of our stores did a really bad physical, so they yeah, so we redid the physical, but all of the star quantities, it added the count.
Are you multi-store?
We are a multi-store, yes.
You are a multi-store. Okay. So the issue with doing things in a multi-store, and you're actually processing the counts, right, at the store. So you're in the store, you do the start physical in the store, you download all the zones, right? You do, when you do the update on a multi-store, all that does is prepare the physical inventory to be quick pulled, right? So I didn't actually specify that, right, in here, but let's cancel out of here, right? So when you update on a multi-store and you're at a remote, all that does is pack up the counts so that they go up to the main, right? And then at the main, you have to update, right?
Right, and that's what we did.
And we did, and that's fine. And that's fine. When you update, right, what happens is that whatever the adjustments were, whatever the differences were, right? So if I go to this discrepancy, right, and I had this difference, right, of plus 11 down on my store, okay, it's going to update that, right? It's going to add 11 to the on-hand for my store at the main. Now, the main is the central repository for the on-hand. So if the main, right, didn't have the same start, right, as the store, then that could account for why everything's getting screwed up. Okay,
but we do our polling cycle.
You do what? Sorry?
We do our polling cycles.
Okay.
And
you initialized the inventory at the main for the store?
I don't think we actually initialized the inventories after we did it.
I would absolutely do that, right? Because, you know, when you're doing a polling cycle, it's only sending those things that have changed since the last time it polled. So if you have a bunch of stuff that's incorrect, right, or the on-hand is incorrect at the main for your store, that's not going to get down to the store unless you initialize. Okay, so have you done this? Have you done the second inventory?
We did, but we went through and edited all of the store start the quantities, because it was adding, like whatever was
Yeah.
counted. Like if you had
Uh-huh.
11, it was saying that it was 22.
In the start?
Yeah.
Okay. And you did a new start?
Yes.
Okay.
It was
That was
weird.
odd.
I mean, we've had RPro forever, and
yeah.
this was the first time we've ever seen anything like that.
Yeah. Well, when you started, so what can happen in 8, right, is if you had, you do the store start, right, sometimes we find that there's like a ghost of previous inventories, right, that it pulls out. So you could have been encountering something like that.
But it's only that.
So did you actually update the bad one, or you went through and edited everything and updated, and did it come out right?
Yeah, we got it to come out right, but it was a mess.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the next time, if the if you see that double, right, in their call tech support and have them deal with it, right? Because there's all these indexed files, right, in Retail Pro that hold previous inventories, because we have archives, right? So I've got these archives and there's all the old ones, and so it's possible, right, because for whatever reason that it got a hold of an old archive file and reused it. I don't know, right? But they would have to work through that with you to try to figure that out. Okay, so when the final Jeopardy answer, right? So you got your second inventory done, you got it posted up on the main. Do you feel like it's okay now?
Yeah, we do feel like it's okay. It's just it was just weird, and I was hoping that I would learn something today that we did wrong.
Yeah, did I push the wrong button? What's the deal here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of anything that would cause it, and everything was doubled, or just some things.
Anything that it was just some things. It was really weird. And I mean, we found where we could go through. We unmerged everything, and we found where we could go through and make it all zeros. Mm-hmm. But it took a long time.
Yeah. So like I say, there's there's a reason for that, right? And you probably had some kind of bad index in a PI file or something like that.
Okay.
So don't try to if it looks wrong, right? And that's not the way that's not normal behavior, right? Then that's the time to just get a tech's opinion on that, because they've seen almost everything.
Okay.
And there's definitely ways that they can go in behind the scenes, right, and do something that may have saved you that effort. No promises, and hopefully it'll never happen again, right?
Hopefully, because it really wigged out one of the managers.
Yeah. All right. Is that it for your questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. You're welcome. Anybody else have any questions? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and remute you, Missy. This webinar, we'll post it and send you an email link to it if you want to review it again. And also, if you need any document, right, if you don't have one of these for the way that you capture your count, just email into service and tell us how you do your counts, right? Are you renting? Do you have your own scanners? Do you do manual counts? And they can email you the appropriate PDF, right, for you to hang on to, right? We make these for a reason, because people don't do the physical but once, twice a year, and sometimes it just helps to have this in front of you as a reminder, right? Or you can also have one of these webinars, right? We're getting so that we do less and less V8 webinars, but there is a library also that's got all of these previous webinars in it. So you can always go view the, if you go to our YouTube channel and you search on V8 physical inventory, you'll see whatever copies we have there. All right, thanks for your attention. All right, and hopefully you have successful PI the next time you do it. Thanks.